guys, Pete Rubish here in London, Ohio at the elitefts headquarters. I'm going to go over the deadlifts and the cues I like to use and kind of a new technique I've been using that I've seen a lot of success with. So I don't like to complicate it as much as I used to. I like to keep it pretty simple. So the main thing with the deadlift, the first thing I want to do is line up my feet. That's the most important thing. That's the number one thing people screw up. They either start with the bar too close to their shins or they start too far away. So either one of those, it's going to put you in a less than optimal leverage position. So generally, I like to line the bar up where it's over the middle of my feet. So right over the midfoot, not too close, but not too far away. And that's where most people are going to be in the optimal position. I also like to be just inside of the knurling. So we've got the start of the knurling just on the outside of my legs. I want to be just inside of that. And that's going to kind of set the tone for your positioning with the rest of the lift. When I grab the bar, I like to be just at the start of the knurling, and this is going to kind of depend on how you're built. This is where there isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all formula. Some people, bigger guys are going to need to go a little wider with their hands. Smaller guys are going to come in a little closer. And I generally like to have the feet pointed fairly straight ahead. There's a slight angle. My toes are pointed out a smidge, but not so much that I'm going to have my knees traveling out, getting in the way of my arms. So I generally try to go straight ahead for the most part with my feet, and that's going to kind of line you up. Now, one of the other mistakes you'll see a lot of guys make is when they start a deadlift, they try to squat down into it too much. So they try to get back here to where their hips are going to shoot up right away. So if you start in too much of a squat position, your hips are going to shoot up right at the start of the lift because your body will naturally put you in the point of the ideal leverage. That's what it's going to do. It's going to naturally drift you to that position. So that's what you see when people's hips shoot up. Generally, the hip shooting up is not a weakness. It's an incorrect starting position. So that's why we don't want to be back here squatting down. I want my hips high to where my shoulders are in front of the bar. So another way you can look at this is don't get your shoulders behind the bar. We want the shoulders slightly in front of the bar. And then another thing that really helps is I want my head up. I want to be looking forward at the start of the lift. So a lot of people look down. But my issue with that is it puts you in a more rounded upper back position, which makes it harder to lock out. So rather than looking down, I want to look forward. And those are the main cues. The last thing I would say is tension through the arms. You want your arms taut to where they're completely locked out. There's no bend in them. We don't want any give. And I want to almost be pushing the bar away from me at the start, pulling the slack out. So even if it's a stiff bar, you can still do this. I do this on a stiff bar as well, because that's what I usually train on. So I'm in my positioning right here. I see this little bit of tension. That's what I want. It's very subtle. When people think about pulling the slack out of the bar, they overthink it. They think it's similar to leg drive on bench. It's overthought, in my opinion. It's subtle. So you do want to try to pull the slack out, get your arms taut, and get that tension. But it's not this major shift. It's just a very subtle thing that's going to set you up a little tighter. So I'm right here. I've got the slack out just like that. I feel that tension through my upper back. You should feel tension all through the upper back, all through the traps, rhomboids. And then I get in my position here. And then I'm going to come down slow. Or not even slow. And you can come down rounded. That's okay. But this whole concept I use now of quiet negatives. So I'm bringing the bar down as quiet as possible. I'm trying to set it down as quiet as possible. So it's not slow. That's a big mistake people make. I'm not necessarily trying to go slow on the way down. I'm just trying to go down to where I set the bar down extremely quiet. And that will engage the low back and upper back even further. You get more benefits out of that. So those are the main things. Give it a shot. And obviously, once the weight's heavier, you won't be able to go quite as quietly. You won't be able to put it down as quietly. But if you still practice that principle early on in your training cycles, it will lead to big gains when you take it out of your training cycle. So I'll start my training cycle out doing a lot of the quiet negatives, and then once the weight gets heavier, I can take that out at the very end when I'm peaking, and I'm way stronger for it. So it's a tremendous low back and upper back strength builder. So I'll show it again. And I can be a little slower with 225 here because it's lightweight. But let's say this was 600 pounds. It's not going to be quite as slow. But the whole point is to be quiet on the way down, not slow. So there's a big differentiation there. I still go fast on the way down, but I set it down quietly to really brace the lats, engage the lats, upper back and low back. So we'll try it again. We'll put it all together. We look at the foot positioning first and foremost. We get the hands dialed in right outside of the knees. Pull the tension out. Hips high, shoulders over the bar, head up. And then I'm just going to come down. Quiet. So I'll do a couple reps here to show you again. But on the way down, don't overthink it either. You don't have to break with your quads. You don't have to use your legs. Use your low back to lower the weight in that rounded position, but just try to set it down quietly. So this has been huge for me. This put about 60 pounds on my deadlift using this and the 45-degree back extensions. These two principles. So again, foot position, hands just outside of the knees at the start of the knurling. Tension, head up. So that kind of gives you an idea of putting it all together. And those are the principles that have really helped me take my deadlift to the next level.